Glorilla. Welcome to another episode of the Never Lose a Deal podcast. Today, I am talking about the power of equity. And I decided to do this episode because for some people, it may be an elementary, topic, depending on uh, your level of, understanding when it comes to finance. And for some people, um, it is going to be a basic conversation. And so today, I want to say that that is who I'm primarily talking to. I'm talking to the individual who does not know about the power of equity. Now, when it comes to equity, I'm going to give you the definition based on, um, you know, uh, the textbooks of finance and accounting. From my former years of being an accountant, I graduated with a bachelor's degree in accounting, spent many years working at CPA firms doing a lot of tax work, a lot of accounting work. So I understand this topic very well. And so, equity, going back to what I was originally talking about, equity is your assets minus your liabilities, and that gives you equity. So at the end of the day, that little basic equation means that it is how much value you have in a particular asset. And on this channel, I know I'm also broadcasting on a podcast, but let me just say this. At the end of the day, it is about your ownership in a particular vehicle. Whether that vehicle is real estate, whether that vehicle is a business, whether that vehicle is a stock portfolio, or any type of investment vehicle, it is what is the value that has built up over time minus any liabilities that is against it, and that piece is your equity. So let's just use real estate, for example. You have a particular asset, whether it's a single family home that you live in, whether it's a multifamily. Right now I'm in the Northeast. And so in the Northeast of New Jersey, it is very common to live in dwellings that are multiple units. It can be a two family, it could be a three family. So outside of the single family, even with those living dwellings, you have something that is considered an asset. And minus any liabilities that's against it, for example, the mortgage, whatever's left over is your equity. So now that I've talked about that very studious way of talking about equity, I want to bring you over to a real life situation. And that is why I titled this The Power of Equity. There are many people who do not know the value of equity. And the reason why I say this is because there are conversations that I have had with people that I know, family members, close friends, and they don't know this. They don't know about equity. And even when a person is a homeowner, meaning they've worked a job, they got approved for a mortgage, they own the home, because here in the state of New Jersey, when you buy a house, you get a mortgage deed, but there's a lien against the mortgage deed, which is the liability against the asset. But at the end of the day, you do have ownership to the asset, but you have a lien against it and you do own it. And any equity that is built up in that particular asset is given to you. It's not given to the bank. But this is what a lot of people do not know. They don't know the value of that equity. So let me give you a real life story and situation. Like I said, friends, family members, people that I know. Someone that I know that's very close to me bought, I'm being cautious because I don't want to give out any um, private information. So I'm trying to change the elements of the story. They own a real estate asset. The type of asset doesn't matter, but they own a real estate asset. They had a job at one time, they had an income, a nice income, and they've gotten older. And so that particular home that they owned, and they still have a very small mortgage. I mean, the mortgage is under 100,000, very small. And let me just say this, the values of homes in the state of New Jersey, and at the end of the day, everything is relative, but it's high. It's not like we have values like, I don't know, South Carolina. Our values are pretty high. But imagine you own a home for a certain amount of years, and you had a mortgage against it, and then you paid down that mortgage, and whatever was left over was the equity. And you never knew the value, you never knew the power of equity. You didn't know that you can get a home equity loan. You didn't know you could refinance it. You didn't even know that you could put that equity to work for you to be able to invest in other assets that can create cash flow. But now you've gotten older. You no longer work that job that you did once have. So now the cash flow of what used to flow in your home only from a job, not from income producing assets, whether it was a business or other pieces of real estate or a stock portfolio, all you really had was your home. And now you don't even have that. And now it's almost to the point where you may feel like your equity is trapped because you've tried to refinance it, but why do that? You have a low interest rate and interest rates are high. So that doesn't make sense to do a refinance. And even if you did a refinance, you may not even qualify because you're on a fixed income. So it's not even going to substantiate if you can even afford to pay the new mortgage note because you're refinancing. So all the terms change. The mortgage amount changes, the interest rates, or what have you. So that doesn't make sense. Then you try to get a home equity line of credit against the home because you have plenty of equity. Like I said, imagine loan under 100K, close to like 60, and the value of your home is almost close. It's like 450,000. All that upside, but you can't even tap into it from a home equity line of credit. You don't have the income. Credit is, a little shaky. And so now you've went through all these years of never knowing this. And now you just feel like you just have something that you can't do anything with. And that's why I titled this video, The Power of Equity. I say all this to say, many of us, you take something so simple, like a game, a board game. And when I say very simple, I'm not going to say understanding equity, because for some people it's all relative. There are people who understand that topic, they have built wealth with it, and they have gone to the races. But then there's a segment of people who have no idea the power that's in their hands. And so that's why the person shared this with me, so I can help them to create some ways to pull that equity out. And that is what we're currently working on. And so it is going to be some creative means that are outside the norm of what most people may think of, because most people, that do own a home, they only know those two options. I can either refinance, but what sense does that make? If I have a low interest rate, I'm not going to refinance in this current market. And then if I try to get a home equity line of credit, I got to get approved. And so now you pretty much left with nothing. And that is where what I do with the creative financing, and I said that in my last podcast episode, is that last month I talked about ways on the equity side of how creative financing could help you in your real estate business. And so in the last episode, I talked about continuing the education and conversations about creative financing. But now I'm talking about it from a standpoint of where equity and debt meets. And so here we're talking about equity because there's not a lot of debt there, but this person is looking to be able to leverage some cash from their home, and rightfully so. And so when me and the person was talking, I started to preference the game of Monopoly. As simple as that game is, make no assumptions. I don't assume everyone has played the game, but what I do know is that many of us may not have really understood the rules to the game and how they apply to real life. Because on a very simple basis, if you think about the game of Monopoly, your goal is to go around the board and buy assets, whether it is the railroad or the utilities or the real estate. At the end of the day, your goal is to land on a particular space and buy assets when you have the opportunity. But many of us not realizing that we just go around the board and just collect the $200. That's really our whole life's goal, is to go around the board and just collect the $200 and then hope that you don't get into a financial situation that can bankrupt you, because once again, that is what the game of Monopoly talks about. So making that simple statement, because those who have played will say, yeah, I've played the game of Monopoly. Yes, I have. But do you really understand how it can play out in real life? Because here the person did what they thought was the right thing to do. They worked the job, made very good money in their job in their younger years. They bought some real estate, their primary place of living, and built up all this equity, but never really understood the power of equity. With what I do with helping real estate investors understand the whole piece of creative financing, how I help them is that it's a two-sided coin. You have the debt piece and you have the equity piece. And for a few years, yes, I have been talking primarily about the debt space, and that's where funding comes in. But many real estate investors don't really look at the other side of the coin from the equity side. And one may say, well, Maria, just because a person, bought some real estate doesn't mean that they're an investor. And I do agree. I'm even going to go further and say, just because you gave yourself the title of real estate investor, but you have not really did anything in terms of taking action in real estate, you're still not an investor. So I don't want to get caught up in semantics of an investor. I'm talking about the person who truly says that I am on a mission to use real estate as a vehicle to build wealth. And if that's you, whether you are new to real estate, whether you have did deals and you are looking to leverage some type of equity or debt. What is debt? You having the ability to get any type of lending, whether it's loans, whether it's lines of credit, whether it's credit cards or what have you. But at the end of the day, that is debt. So anything that a lender has loaned to you is considered debt, even down to you being able to access some type of private capital. It is debt. But then you have the equity piece. And the equity piece is your ability to take what you currently owned and be able to leverage it to put the money to work. That's what I truly believe creative financing is the ability to bring two worlds together. And that's where the power of equity is 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 really what I'm talking about, because many people don't even know how those two worlds come together. Most people know that those who have bought a home and they have not did anything outside of just buying their primary home, they just really they understand the mortgage piece, because they do know, okay, I bought a home, I have a mortgage, I have to pay that mortgage every month, but they don't understand the equity piece. And many people have been so tabooed with the conversation of money and not understanding it that they won't even look to even inquire about how the equity piece even works. And I really do believe that the financial education is something that you have to seek. I know many of us have been beat upside the head with the Robert Kiyosaki principles, school doesn't teach you about financial education or what have you. But you start to really, when you start to see things, at least me, when I've start to see things, whether it had to do with my life or people that I know or professionals that I've met, it really shows us that, you know what, many of us are still learning the rules of the game. Did you know that there's actually industries created for people who equity is trapped in their homes? I remember the first time I found this out had to be around, I'm thinking, about 2008 or 2009. One of my mother's close girlfriends, homeowner, owned her home for many years. She got up into her 80s, and once again, retirement money just wasn't enough. And she had built up all this equity in her home. And she knew that I was involved in real estate, and she shared with me, she said, you know, someone is, shared with me some information about how I can pull some equity out of my home. And I want you to take a look at it. And I took a look at it. And that's when I first came across reverse mortgages. I had never heard of it before. And the person that I am, I'm that person I'm very analytical. Remember I said in the beginning, I'm a former accountant. So I'm the type, I'm going to do a deep dive. I'm not a person who just jumps in. I have to do my research. I have to do a deep dive, and I did. And I learned everything that I could about reverse mortgages. And what I've learned, it's for seniors. I think at that time you had to be about 62 or 65. And it was for seniors who was equity rich and cash poor. So meaning that their primary home, they had lived in it for 30 plus years. My particular family member, like I said, my mother's girlfriend, her home was free and clear. She had nothing on it. She had never took out a home equity loan. She had never took out any type of lines of credit. She didn't have no liens against it. So it was free and clear, all this equity. And if you remember that time, remember I said this had to be about 2008 or 2009. I want to even say maybe even 2007, because I'm trying to think if I had even had my son yet. And he was born in '06. But I definitely want to say it was probably before 2008, before the real estate crash. And if you know, all throughout the country, real estate values, they blew out the roof. So here you got, New Jersey. You have one of the biggest cities in New Jersey, and this is a multifamily property that she owned, and she had close to almost $500,000 in equity. And here she is, a senior, and she can't even tap into it. Well, that is when she found out about reverse mortgages because someone had shared it with her. And so I say all this to say, did she go the reverse mortgage route? Yes, she did. She did get her equity. She was able to supplement her income by pulling that income out because she took a lump sum. Because I know they give you options. You do a lump sum or you can do an annuity. At that time, they let you take out a lump sum. So she took out the lump sum. And then she did pass away. She passed away maybe about a year or two later. But I say this to say she retired at 65 and she lived 20 years later to 80 something years old, never getting access to her equity. And then when she does learn that she can get access to her equity, she passes a year later. Did she really get the fruits of it? I guess. I know she did have her house remodeled. She had some modifications done to her home. So only one can say, and only she can say, did she, get the fruits of her labor? I guess. She didn't lose her home to no foreclosure, what have you. I say all this to say you can go many years being a homeowner, even being involved in real estate, and not even know the power of equity and what it can do and how it can change your life. So I say this to say, if your trajectory, if your goal is to really win in real estate and whatever that is, whatever that you do, there's not just one way. There's 100 ways to skin a cat. There's so many ways for you to win in real estate. You have to find the road that best suits you. But at the end of the day, understand the role of how those two come together. How does debt affect what it is that you want to do with real estate, and how does equity affect what you do in real estate? And that's why for me, as I continue having these conversations about creative financing, that is really in a nutshell of what I think creative financing is and how I help, clients, is bringing those two worlds together for you to be able to meet your financial goals for the future. There's not no one way. Anyone who's saying creative financing is just this one thing, of course, the audience they're talking to, they're lying. That's just like saying, if you gonna buy real estate, you just gotta buy and hold. And we know that that is not true. But there is a group of people that you can tell it to, and they'll take it as gospel and think it is true. So I leave this conversation with saying, be a student of understanding the power of equity and how it helps and how it could help you. Understand that your understanding of that would probably solve a lot of the issues that one may have. I don't want to go into this because I want to leave it to another episode. But even when it comes to the conversation of being able to access funding when you want to use it for real estate, what a lot of people don't know, and remember, my promise to you on this podcast or on YouTube is to go much further than a lot of the surface conversations online. And so for the last couple of years since COVID, you had a lot of people telling you about leveraging credit or what have you. But what they didn't tell you is that that's a one-sided coin. It's a one-sided coin, and it's the debt coin. And it's not to say debt is bad. You just got to know what's the best thing for you. Because there's people who like the sound and the understanding of leveraging debt. But then the thing is that they're also in one ear trying to do it debt free. And once again, the two are not in alignment. So understand that if your goal is to be able to do anything that requires you to get funding, getting credit cards, lines of credit, loans, raising capital, those are all forms of debt that you need to understand and how it mirrors to the equity portion of what it is that you want to do. That's why some people who have tried to go into the space of leveraging funding got their self spanked. It's because they didn't understand the impact. They didn't understand the impact of how debt works, because they like the sound and the salaciousness of being able to do something, the OPM conversation. Oh, OPM sounds good. Yes, other people's money, leveraging credit cards, all this other stuff. But like I said, they only know one side of the coin, and they have no idea how the equity piece plays a part in them leveraging debt. Once again, going into the interest rates of the money that you're leveraging, and then comparing it to what type of rate of return you possibly can get with the asset that you're looking to buy. Once again, no one's talking about that. No one's talking about those two sides of the coin. They're only talking about one piece of it. And if a person's only talking about one piece and they're not really talking about the other piece, it can leave a person confused because there's no context to what a person is saying. One thing about me, I'm very discerning when I'm hearing people share one piece and not the other piece. Now, I don't claim to be no financial wizard, but with my years of experience, and I may not know a certain particular thing when it comes to real estate, but the principles of how finance works in relation to real estate is all the same. The principles are the same. You get any textbook, any book off Amazon, the principles are the principles. And that is what many people need to understand when it comes to the power of equity. So once again, this is Aurelia. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate and review if you're listening on the podcasting streaming sites. But if you are watching here on YouTube, please give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, and let me know your thoughts when it comes to equity. Also, if you want to learn more about me or if you are new to me, the website is scrolling on the video. You can go to www.neverloseadeal.com to learn more about me, what I do, and how I help real estate investors just like you leverage creative financing to build wealth and expand their real estate portfolio. So once again, this is Lorelia. I'm signing off. I'll see you in the next episode.